Sir Ed Davey, Nick Clegg's former colleague and leader of the Liberal Democrats, experienced a little of the new tone yesterday after tweeting, "People have had enough of Elon Musk interfering with our country's democracy when he clearly knows nothing about Britain. It's time to summon the US ambassador to ask why an incoming US official has suggested the UK government should be overthrown." To this, Musk replied with the words, "Snivelling cretin." A response I think we can all agree worthy of Oscar Wilde at his more flamboyant. Well, I think it's only right we should hear from Sir Ed himself, so let's do that now and first get his reaction to the fruity language Elon Musk directed at him yesterday.
Listen, if you're in politics, you get used to being called all sorts of names. And frankly, in free speech, I'm not too worried about that. What I am worried about is when the world's wealthiest man, who's very close to the president-elect of the United States, puts out tweets saying America should overthrow and liberate our country. That is outrageous. And it's one of the reasons I called for the UK government to call in the US ambassador, make it clear, and the future US ambassador, to make it clear that this is not acceptable.
So this is an entirely serious suggestion. You think that Keir Starmer or David Lammy or both should call in the ambassador and say this has to stop?
Yeah, or indeed even contact President-elect Trump's office directly. He's about, we're told, to appoint Elon Musk to a position in his government. You cannot have officials of a government which is supposed to be one of our closest allies calling for our democratic elected government to be overthrown. I mean, we know...
And ministers to be imprisoned while that...
Yeah, it is just quite shocking what he's been saying. You know, I've got my disagreements with this government, but they were Democrat elected, and the place I saw that is in our country, in our parliament, not being pushed around by an American, whoever they are.
I started off by talking a moment ago about the general political atmosphere moving a bit to the right, very sharply to the right in many ways. What happens if this doesn't stop? If Elon Musk and now Mark Zuckerberg is following with Meta start to behave in a way which becomes increasingly disruptive for British politics? How, as British people, do we react to this? How do we respond?
Well, first of all, my reading of the British people is they don't like this. There's a large majority who are not that keen on Elon Musk, for starters, let alone President-elect Trump. So I have some faith in the British people. And I think in our democracy, in our parliament, we need to set our British values, which frankly are against the stuff that we're hearing. You know, when some individuals, particularly a tiny number of very rich individuals, have too much power, be it in money, be it through government, be it through control of the media, that is offensive to British values. And we, certainly as Liberals, and I'm sure people across the political parties, frankly, want to make sure that these overpowerful people are held to account.
Let me talk about another British political party, the Conservatives, because Robert Jenrick has waded into this debate, saying that we have imported an alien culture with medieval attitudes to Britain, and he's caused a huge amount of offence. But the truth is, there have been British Pakistani gangs raping and abusing young girls and women all across this country for some time. There is an element of truth to that, isn't there?
Well, it's true that have been some shocking and appalling crimes committed. And we need to remember the victims and their families. We need to take action to stop it happening and to get justice. I think the remarks by Mr. Jenrick go way beyond that, frankly. And
just explain to me why you think that.
Well, I mean, let me just talk about Mr. Jenrick, though. As we've heard today in the media, he was asked about his record as Home Office Minister, where he had responsibility with his colleagues for taking forward 20 recommendations from Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired for 7 years an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. They failed. The Conservatives and Robert Jenrick himself failed to act on recommendations of an inquiry into tackling child sexual abuse. I'm afraid the Conservatives don't really have much of a voice because of their huge failure to act.
What about the specific allegation the rule of law in this country was suspended because of fear about community relations?
Well, that would be unacceptable at any stage. That's what I understand part of the inquiry looked into, not just the inquiry chaired by Professor Jay, but a lot of the other inquiries, the telephone inquiry, and so on. And so action has been taken. And one of the things I felt really really alarmed about this debate, and you heard it indeed earlier today from Professor Jay herself, is that facts seem to be not involved in this debate. The reality of what has happened, the reality that people are behind bars quite rightly for some of the most appalling crimes. Now, we need to take far more seriously and act far more quickly on all aspects of child sexual abuse, whether these grooming gangs that we've been talking about now, whether in the Church of England, whether anywhere in our society. We have to protect our children. They are the victims of this. We need to stand up, particularly for women and girls.
I spoke to one of the leading lawyers who acts for victims of child abuse and survivors of child abuse, and he said he thought this was still going on, but he also said he thought there was a specific Pakistani cultural problem which encouraged this to happen. Do you agree with that?
Well, the inquiries into the grooming gangs that we saw in one or two of our northern cities concluded that there was some aspects there, and that needed to be...
It's more than one or two now. They're talking, the suggestions there are 50 British towns and cities where this has happened, or is happening.
Or where any crimes are committed by whoever, whatever their background, they have to face justice. And we need to take it incredibly seriously. And I think the way you do that is by making sure you're supporting our police, you're making sure that our courts are operating properly, and you're as tough as you possibly can be on these, frankly, shocking crimes.
I mentioned the Meta story earlier on, Zuckerberg effectively kissing the ring for Donald Trump. Have you had a chance to speak to your former colleague, Nick Clegg?
No, I haven't. What I will say is it is quite troubling. We've already seen what Elon Musk has done, having taken over Twitter, now X, where he's, as far as I'm told by the experts, he's changed the algorithms to promote himself and his views. And so suddenly this massive global social media company is propagating Elon Musk's rather right-wing views. And if that happens...
It does change everything, doesn't it? I mean, it's a really big change in the ecosystem, whatever we call it. Do you think the case is now strong for serious new regulation of X and possibly of Facebook as well, if it goes down the same road?
Well, this country, to be fair, cross-party, and this was done by the last government, was looking at this type of regulation, online abuse of children, and indeed online abuse of adults too, has to be cracked down on. And you cannot allow a social media platform to be used for fomenting things like we saw this summer.
Time to accelerate that, greater regulation?
I think we should. I also think we need to work with our European allies. One of our responses to what's happening from the USA needs to be to redevelop our relationship with our European friends. And I'll give you exclusive on this, Andrew. Next week I'm making a speech about how I see our future relationship with the EU going forward, because it's really part of the issues around trade, part of the issues around security, and here about the issues of regulations of big tech.